Today we're speaking with Lesley Klassen and John Luxford. They are the co-founders of Flipside XR, a real-time animation and XR broadcast company that is shaping the future of immersive live broadcast. They are the creators also of Flipside Studio, which is a virtual production software for animation companies that offers them the absolute fastest way to create animated shows. And so think of it as the television studio inside of virtual reality that's used to make animated content. And I'll get the guys to explain it a little bit further too. And yes, there is a market for this, and Lesley and Flipside are the leaders in it. And some of their accolades include having raised a pre-seed round with Boost VC, which is one of the biggest investors in VR. They've worked with, their product has been used by Walt Disney Direct and RTL Group as a prototype for a show that is streaming on some of the largest private broadcasters in Germany. They have additional content that's created and now available on major streaming platforms, including Amazon Prime, YouTube, Twitch, and Caffeine. And it's even been used by Dell Records for music videos. So their company, too, has won some awards, and they were runner-up at the VR Awards for the most innovative company of the year. They were also nearly bought by one of the big 5 tech companies. So Flipside started in 2014. At that time, they were called Campfire Union. And Flipside, the software, began in early 2016, evolving out of a series of experiments in virtual performances and social VR. They are a small team of developers and artists who believe that technology should make things better. So if that is not enough to draw you in, let's get right to it. I have Lesley and John here with me. Welcome to Start Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so that was a lot of info I just gave.
I feel like that, yeah.
Right? You guys, do you feel proud when you hear it all in one spot?
There's some pride.
Quite.
Yeah, I'm feeling little pricklies in the back of my neck going
right?
up there. Yeah.
That's good. Tell us a little bit more about Flipside XR, how it came to be, what you think of when I say all that stuff.
Well, I guess how it came to be, and there's kind of probably different perspectives on this, but
there's probably 3 solid perspectives.
3 different perspectives of how he came to be. But we actually all worked together in the same non-for-profit for a while, doing basically media production. John was programming, I was directing content, Rachel was doing art, and we just kind of thought we could do it better. And through various kind of circumstances, we decided that we wanted to start a company together, and we started the Campfire Union. And yeah, that's how I see it.
Yeah, it was really, so you jumped ship faster than we did as well.
That was true.
So,
like to get into the business, to really commit to it.
And even if we rewind further, me and Les started a business together back in like 2006, 2007-ish. That was an e-learning platform. But so we've all been kind of, and I've known Rachel since forever at this point.
Right, and Rachel's a third co-founder who I should have mentioned here. Absolutely, yeah.
And so we got to work on a virtual welding simulator, a project at this job, and all of us were kind of designing it, and that gave us this taste for virtual reality, and we're like, oh man, it's really clunky, but you can see where it's going. Like you can really see there's going to be something here. How long is that going to take? Well, the answer's still, I think that's still up in the air.
We're still figuring how long it's going to take for virtual reality to arrive. But and then on my side of it too, I started developing some of my own personal projects before we were a company on our own, getting into meditation stuff, and I had a profound nostalgic experience because I created an experience that reminded me of my dad's campground. My dad has a campground in the Paw, and so I created these trees and in VR and had some stars. And I was looking up in VR and I saw this little virtual star. And then I took a break and I went down to my park, and I also happened to be looking up. And I saw some trees and a star, and this weird emotional, like electrical snap hit me. And I'm like, holy cow, no mediums made me feel this way ever in my life.
Like the 2 experiences matched.
They did. Like, it was like, even though I was crafting something from my dad's campground, I had a similar experience in the park that I was visiting that same day. And it made me realize that there's this kind of visceral connection to the medium that you can't get on television. You can't get it anywhere else. And at that point in time, I knew that I wanted to work in virtual reality for the rest of my life. I didn't know what it was going to look like.
Fell in love.
Yeah, I fell in love with VR. Yeah. I fell in love with VR. Then I went to see my therapist after.
Right, it's normal. Don't worry.
So yeah, like I guess we could fast forward that a bit, and we really had no idea what we were going to make when we started the company. We're like, let's sort of cobble together contract work, do like web development, which was like more our traditional wheelhouse, e-learning, things like that, obviously. And we were like, but let's just keep like, what's the next experiment we could do? What's the next little thing we can do? And those sort of grew until we were like, well, we got to do something bigger. Let's make a game. Let's make a full, and that's a daunting thing. And so we spent like the next 2 years doing that.
Yeah, we made a game, launched a game, released a game, learned that games are hard.
Yeah. But it proved we could do it, and like we could ship a complete thing. And it also gave us a bunch of connections because Oculus was looking for early content at that time, and we got in with their social team really early on. So I think we were the first third-party game to use Oculus's multiplayer social platform, and which was just a little two-player play like a card game in front of each other, but
using virtual reality.
Yeah.
So you could be in totally separate places, but you felt like you were sitting across from each other playing a game.
Yeah.
So technically it was the world's first card game in virtual reality, and which was really cool. And Vice did a thing on us, which was really awesome.
Yeah.
And started seeing some success. And then Oculus brought us into their internal testing team, so we got access to all the secret software before everybody. And then they invited us to speak at their big developer conference, and we started to recognize after that we were becoming world leaders in the medium.
Well, these are the kind of stories I really love, because this is like a small company from Winnipeg, from the prairies, who's getting to work on these big projects and see kind of the inside of a company that's quite influential. For those that don't know, tell us a little bit about what that means to work with Oculus.
I mean, this man...
weird relationship, because they're pretty opaque.
But they're pretty important to the industry, are they not?
They're one of the. I mean, they're the biggest headset maker. So everyone wants a relationship with them.
Yeah.
Like that's everyone wants a relationship with them, with Valve, who make the other, and HTC, and like basically all the important ones. You're like, just get me an in.
Yeah, so that
right?
sounds fast for you guys to be able to do an early project with them. How did you guys manage that?
Well, there's two things. First of all, they actually we got them to convince them to give us some money, which was awesome. So we got some money from them. So actually, technically, one of our first customers was Oculus.
Nice.
And then what happened was, the game that we were making was so aligned with the needs of their social platform. Their social platform lead was at our talk, that we got invited to do a talk about this game we were making at Oculus Connect, which is their big developer conference. Well, a bunch of Oculus employees were in the audience watching, and they came up afterwards and said, your game is really aligned with our social platform. Do you want to join? So really what it is it's like this series of serendipitous moments connected to a willingness to put yourself out there. So that's what we did. We put ourselves out there. We connected with the serendipity of it all. And then we had a team when we came back afterwards that executed and actually delivered on beta testing their software. So suddenly we become very valuable for Oculus, because now we're giving them insight into real market data with a real developer, using their tools, and we're validating what they're doing, giving them feedback. And so that relationship becomes really important in the beginning. So we just kind of did it,
Yeah. And I think some advice we got from some friends of ours from Alchemy Labs, who are they were a partially local VR company. They made like Rick and Morty VR, job simulator, and then got bought by Google. And they were like, look, just be the squeaky wheel. Like, just don't wait for them to ask you what they think. Just start, like, if something's wrong with the hardware or the software, or like they asked you to beta test, tell them what you think. So we were like, all right. So we just started, hey, this isn't working. How do you do this? And then by the end of the game, they're like, oh, we have that established relationship. We can email this person, and they'll reply. So it kind of, it was like, earn it by providing value first. And I think that was kind of our in. And the challenge I'd say there is that our next move wasn't to make another game. So we were like, okay, so how do we make an inroad into the other team? Because that team was just like, let's make games. We only care about games.
This is another thing. If a startup is looking at developing relationships with these big companies, here's what you have to realize is that they have a lot of different divisions, and the divisions don't always talk to each other. And your relationships that you make in one side don't necessarily relate to the relationship on another side, and everybody leaves their job. So I can't tell you how many people have left Oculus since we started, and that's a thing to remember too. It's a constant renewal of relationships, and that is one of the tougher lessons we learned because we kind of went in there really hot. It was awesome. And now we're not making a game, we're making an app. And Oculus has doubled down on games as a means to grow the market. So apps don't fit in that calculation. And so when you realize that your creation isn't aligned with your big partner's fundamental beachhead market, which is games, you need to figure out how to develop these relationships in other ways. And so we're still doing that now. And it's getting much better, and we're in a new phase in a new relationship with them, but that's a whole process.
Wouldn't there be pressure at that point then to do what they're asking for though? Like if this is a big company and they're moving in a certain direction, did you feel pressure to then maybe stop and start over and instead really focus on that game side?
No.
Or are you stuck to your guns?
It's not even sticking to our guns. We looked at ourselves.
And what you really cared about creating.
We really had to think about this. Like games, creating games there's a certain kind of skill set and approach to making a game that's different than an app. Lux actually has the most product development on our team. And so for us to kind of develop a product in a way that's going to sustain ourselves, we really had to align it with our internal skills. And products were a stronger fit for us than a game. Even though a game is a product for functionality fit better for us than a product for fun.
Okay. So now you have Flipside Studio, which is a product, I guess, that you're able to create basically like a cartoon, an animation using virtual reality. So in place of like potentially wearing, the big suit where you have all little balls and you're moving around, which needs people in person as well. So during a time like COVID, I imagine it's potentially easier to use some of your software that might be remote to be able to create some of the same stuff. But how accessible is it in a general sense? Like, could I start using it tomorrow, or is this something really that like animation studios are using because they have a deeper breadth of knowledge?
There are some aspects that are definitely like, because it's a very broad piece of software at this point. There's a lot of things you realize you need to do in order for somebody to go, hey, I have an idea. I want to make this. I'm going to use this tool. It's like, well, that tool's like a Swiss Army knife. So because there's just all kinds of different aspects. So some of those are quite technical, like some game engine experience, at least like integrating artwork and more on the art side, not on like coding, but just you need to know lighting. You need to know like a little bit about like budgets of how much like detail you can push in a scene. So we try to provide guidance there.
Those are technical budgets, not financial budgets.
like
Right,
how much you can actually render on a computer before it's like, I just can't do VR plus multiplayer and all your voices and record and all this and then stream 4K out and like have Twitch comments coming in and like there's a million little things. So you kind of have to like know some of that, but then it's probably about as technical as doing a podcast, I would say.
Yeah, see, that's the thing is on the other side. So there's that whole like custom side, right? Where you're going to make it the way you want. So when we work with enterprise customers or clients, they want their own thing and we support them and we help them make their own thing. And we become a bit of a service division for them on how to like build your own virtual set or build your character. But if you fundamentally know how to run this, which is a series like connecting microphones through a board and to a computer, and you're okay with our stock assets, like if you want to use what we provide you, because we provide you assets like characters and sets so you can kick the tires, you know, and get a feel for it.
There won't be a custom Margaux tomorrow.
There won't be a custom Margaux, but
we should get there.
But there might be a dinosaur or a lizard or...
What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say, Les?
We can get there.
Yeah.
But where we're at is lizard a little bit. With some of our characters.
Or you can find you can find some of our charming characters that our users have uploaded.
Right.
But then what that's more like is spending a day or two in the software, and then you have it. So that's a long answer.
Well, give me a little bit more of a sense of the industry that you're selling to.
We are selling to animation studios, and we're actually starting to sell to game studios as well. But the animation studios, so you have this animation studio market. It's 3D animation studios. Now you break those down. It's 3D animation studios that are interested in real-time animation, and then you break that down to real-time animation studios that are 3D that use VR. So it's like a really small subsection of this animation market. And then XR game companies and XR studios, which are already using a lot of the hardware, we can sell to them
And define XR quickly.
XR is AR and VR. So like VR is virtual reality, so you're completely immersed. AR is things that are in your field of view, but you can see the world around you. And anything in between is a variation of this spectrum of XR.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. Did you do good there,
Good
John? Was that good enough?
explanation.
Yeah. Now, so that industry that you just defined and kind of broke down, it sounds like it's getting pretty niche. What's that like working in a niche industry? What do you need to know to be able to navigate and insert yourselves into that and actually have a piece of the pie?
What I'm learning right now is you actually have to stop selling, and you actually have to be you have to put yourself in a position like you are the expert in the room that can help hold the hands of people who want to cross over into a brand new industry. And as soon as you can develop the relationship and trust around you're the one that's going to help them cross over, because what's happening, this is a really interesting place we're in. So 3D animation's been around for a while. We've all seen Pixar movies. We know how, it's laborious in your work, or like Tangent Animation does stuff here, and you're working, you're rendering. It's taking 2 days per frame to render. It's crazy, right? And now the animation industry is going, oh, I could use a game engine to do this. So that's one big technological jump. And so we have to be there to help them understand that you can use a game engine. So you're not even selling our product at that point.
And that just gets them to, instead of like, hours and hours per frame, what if those frames just get spit out and they're
in seconds
instead?
Seconds. So see, there's a big
that's
savings.
A huge jump for
right?
them.
So, but that's a big change because the animation industry is kind of a little bit stuck in their ways. And so a small percentage of them are looking at that real-time idea, okay, like using a game engine for animation. And then we come in and say, and we have a solution that uses VR. So they got to make another leap into this immersive area. So we find that a lot of the things that we focus on are larger enterprise sales, and that we're doing a lot more hand-holding to help them get over these processes. It's not like we're selling a copy of Photoshop that everyone knows they need and they're going to pay $30 a month.
Yeah. It's also, they're in this weird place because animation typically never had to contend with the release cycles of a YouTube channel, or even worse, like Twitch, where people are like streaming for 12 hours and going crazy. Like you can't just stream a Rick and Morty 12-hour episode. That
Right.
takes a long time to
work,
make, right?
right?
So the animation world just isn't really savvy to the whole world of real time that young people are more and more, that's what they're looking
Wanting
for.
to consume, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there's this total mismatch there, and some of them are kind of going, all right, I think we're seeing this, but we don't know how to get there, and like, is that even possible? And well, it's probably too technical, and all these fear-based response
Sure, yeah, of course,
essentially,
because
or
anything new comes with that.
yeah,
Right.
or just dismissing it as like, oh no,
it's never gonna
we're
happen.
old-time animators, we want our stuff, we'll take the render
Really
time.
clean or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what they're thinking is the trade-off.
Newspaper
'Cause
blogs.
There
in that same
are
Right.
compromises to real time, right? And both at the level of like just rendering a frame right away versus even like rendering like 90 of those a second in VR, which is way more, So doing the thing in VR makes like a ton of new things possible that they couldn't do before. Like, it's not just faster production time, it's actually now you can interact with your audience. So like that's what the audience wants. They want to chat. They want to have some say. They want to steer the show a bit, and they want acknowledgement in it, right? And you can engage, but you can't do that without something like this. So we're like that.
There's lots of we're doing a lot of new things, and so that's
Large
what
awakening.
We spend most of the time like introducing ideas that people take 6 months to a year to even go yes to. So
Right. That's a big challenge. You guys sound like you're up for it, though, because you have picked a niche industry and tricky field. And talking about a bit of those challenges along the way, I know you raised a pre-seed round, which is not a challenge. That's exciting. I mean, it was hard, but I know that you also had tried to raise a seed round and failed. Talk a bit about why you think that happened that way.
Well, I mean, because I was leading that process, and one of the things, there's a few things that were involved in that. One, if you look at the way, we were going into a software as a service model. If you look at trends and how you raise from a software as a service company, you need $100,000 of, recurring revenue each month before you really can start demonstrating a whole other level of fundraising, right? And so some of the sales metrics have to be there for you to raise a round. Just didn't align with the fact that the market is so niche and we really were ahead of the game. And so then we looked for VR investors, and you know what? It comes down to, you got to knock on more doors than we knocked on. You got to push yourself harder than we did. And you got to be more disciplined in the process, because getting the seed round was about wowing the investor. Getting the next round, or pre-seed round, was about that. Getting the next round is about showing all the business models and elements and components in place so that there's a trajectory that they can see where it goes. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a combination of our product really still figuring out its voice and us not having the right narrative in front of the investor. And there's a point in time where you realize that you got to kind of stop the process, pull back, reevaluate, find other revenue streams, and then be open to raising again. But that second raise would be, I would say, something I would spend a year at before I would even start going out and raising. And so the amount of effort before you raise is super important. There's a lot of things that I would do differently. Like, I just did a lot of, run into the wall and go, oh, that didn't work, and that didn't work, and that didn't work, because we weren't wowing these people into our first check.
Is it just practicing your pitch, or what are some of those things? What are some of those?
It's not the pitch.
Pieces?
It's not the pitch. It's more like you need to have, all 200-300 investors kind of lined up. You need to do all the understanding of check sizes and who does lead rounds and who doesn't do lead rounds. You have to control a certain level of FOMO, like fear of missing out. You need to raise in parallel, not in sequence. So when you really gotta you gotta load up that slingshot all the way full, and you gotta stretch it all the way back, and you gotta do all that work, and you gotta kind of do it with a level of coolness and calmness and collectedness to even attempt a successful raise. So we did a lot of more stuff in sequence, mismanaged FOMO, didn't have enough background research on a particular VC.
Yeah.
And so you just start realizing, after a while, you're like, okay, this momentum is not happening, because there's a certain level of prep and knowledge and preparation and timing and storytelling. And you're teasing this thing out in a way that gets people really excited, Yeah,
and I think we were finding we were all over the place with our messaging too, because we were still figuring out how to pitch something so new, what we were building. We were we have a large vision. Today, we really fundamentally have a large vision, but we're such a small team, and we're going, so we have to build to get there, but we can only show you this much so far. So what's the tip of the iceberg that you show people?
Yep.
And I think
you want to speak to the future, so they're excited about what your potential is for those guys who are having the FOMO, who might have FOMO, those type of investors. Yeah.
But then the thing is, if you do that, they're like, you're taking way too big of an idea. This is never going to fly. Now you have
where's the real numbers?
Where's the real?
Because we actually kind of built the far out vision at that time, and then we're like, but there's so many holes to get there.
Yeah.
And then that vision seemed too big for us in their eyes. And then now that's not even part of our app. And we're actually just focused on providing value.
Yeah.
So big learning from that.
Big switch.
And from just working with the realities of the market size is that it's not necessarily that someone's going to abandon Maya or Blender and suddenly adopt Flipside Studio. It has to provide a useful value to them beside their existing workflow. And so we spent a good year just going, okay, how can we substantially save people time in their pipeline? And then they'll get really used to the software, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, maybe we'll do a real-time show.
And you guys had some really good tips in there, I think, and a lot of Les, what you said is places you failed, and I think that's the place that people need to kind of listen, because there may not have been the what you should do, but there were certainly the things you need to research, the things you need to look at in there. So that's really helpful. And one thing that we mentioned in your intro that I want to get to here too is that you were almost bought by one of the big five, which means you were doing something right. We just talked about a lot of things that were tricky here in your process, and for those who need a reminder, the big five are Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google, or Alphabet, depending what you want to call them. So that's pretty exciting. Those are all really big companies. And I know you can't really tell us which one, but tell us a bit, what you're allowed to tell us about what was that experience like? How good were your negotiation skills at that point?
actually, okay, I actually have a great story to tell about this one.
All right.
Well, what ended up happening is a Winnipeg contact gave us the introduction to this company, and we were at the accelerator. So I was living in San Mateo, and I had a meeting with this company, and I was late for it by half an hour, my first meeting. Because I had no idea how San Francisco traffic worked at all. So I was like, I thought I had lots of time, and they're laughing, and we get in there, and I show the product, and we just instantaneously blow their minds. And then from there, it just goes on to an ongoing questions around vision. And we really painted our vision, and we just gave we gave them the biggest, broadest, largest vision. They didn't care about us being a small team. They loved the vision. So then what happened is they also had bought a series of other VR companies. And so they happened to have one of their big VR companies they bought happened to use the app as well, and they got super excited about it. And there was this convergence of like people out of their New York office, people out of their San Francisco office, and everyone was getting, so it started bubbling up. There's some energy around there. And then we did a larger pitch where it was in multiplayer, and we had you guys in Winnipeg, and I was at one of their offices in up the Silicon Valley area there. And on my way to the office or the pitch, I totally lost my mind. I call up Rachel and Lux, and I'm losing it because I'm feeling like this pressure and this nervousness. I'm sitting on a sidewalk. I have all my papers have fallen out of my satchel.
Like out of a movie.
I got a laptop up. I'm fixing something on the laptop. I'm calling Lux and Rachel.
A frantic call.
Just a frantic call. They calm me right down, and we go in and we just nail this pitch with this really big software company. And then it went into a 7 month, felt like 7 years, 7 month prolonged evaluation. They actually sent engineers and managers to Winnipeg.
Oh, if they sent them at that point, you guys were close.
Oh yeah, they flew out. They did a full evaluation of our company, our individual team.
Yep.
We broke down a project that we were working on, showing how we thought about things. In fact, afterwards, we found out that we were their best evaluated team in the entire year that they evaluated us.
Come on. So what was the thing?
Their vision changed. It wasn't even the team that was evaluating us. The people above them, basically the tops of the company,
we're going a different direction with
we're
acquisitions.
We're going to go in a different direction. And they even tried to push us still because they saw the value of what we were building. And so it just all fell apart at the end, which was a deep pit of harshness and despair.
I've been through that due diligence process, and I can't imagine if at the end it didn't go through. But it's very common, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's people's second or third time around that goes through, and you learn from everything, right? So now that you've done that, you probably have more, things written down than you used to have of your process and engineering pieces that they want to see.
Yeah,
it's you had to document everything, right?
Well, we did. We have like a 40-page document that broke down everything fundamentally, what was ours and our tech and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But what was, and sadness, he was away at a conference when he found out.
Yeah, I found out the morning of the first day of Unite, the Unity Game Engine conference. And this was my first Unite. And I was pumped. I'm like, all right, I'm going to have a great time.
Things,
I'm going to learn stuff. I'm going to meet other geeks. We're going to go geek out.
You still did all that, I'm sure.
I had a big sad.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what kind of day is this going to be? And I think around stumbling home around 2 a.m. later with some developers I met that day from other parts of the world, talking about life. I had a great day.
Good.
All things considered.
Okay, you guys, this brings us to a fun time. We're in our speed round right away here.
Let's do it, speed round.
So you guys know the drill. We gave you the Coles notes. So a couple words each or a sentence, and we're going to get right into it. Ready?
Okay.
Ready.
Okay, describe yourself in one word.
Stubborn.
Emotional.
Describe your business in a word or two.
Tripod.
Outlandish.
What is the hardest part of starting a business?
Endurance.
Oh, yeah. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
What do you suck at?
Emotional emotions.
I'm disorganized.
At any point, have you ever truly considered giving up on this entrepreneurial life?
Yes.
Yeah,
multiple times. Multiple times.
So, about 11 a.m. today, about 4 p.m.
Just now. Okay, great. What keeps you up at night?
Money, always just keeping people employed.
Yeah, I would say it's the constant, like, responsible for people's livelihoods.
Yeah.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
I just went completely blank. Wow.
Some good advice. Some kind of good advice.
I mean, fail faster. I mean, everyone says it, but like fail faster and get yourself out of your own way. Fail faster. I don't know, things like that.
Seek external validation so you can't be dishonest with yourself.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What is the best way for you to relax?
Actually, I like to sit on my balcony, stare at the green leaves, and sit on my balcony.
Specific.
Music, gardening, and marijuana is legal now, so
you're allowed to say it on the podcast.
Exactly.
I just like staring at leaves, okay? So
right? Different kind of leaves. What is the toughest thing you've ever done?
This
The
podcast.
podcast
today,
very
now.
difficult.
This has been grueling.
Running this company. This company has been, every time we get to the top of the mountain, we realize we're standing on a pebble.
Yeah. A sand, pebble.
Right. What does innovation mean to you?
Doing things without really caring about what the market says.
Yeah. Innovation often isn't necessarily profitable. It's just a new thing.
Guys, that was our speed round.
Wow.
Well done.
We survived.
You guys did really well, actually. Really well.
Sweet.
Impressed.
I tried to stay honest to the moment, but there was some there. I'm like, advice. And I'm just like, my best advice is I should be seeking more advice.
Wait a minute. I guess you need it. Yeah. That's your
advice.
follow-up from today. Yeah. You're welcome.
Thanks.
Okay. So we can't have a show right now while we're in basically a pandemic still. Not basically. We are still.
We're in there.
Yeah.
We're still here.
We're still here. Definitely can't talk about it to an XR and VR company who are doing really interesting technical things without asking you this question, because I'm curious. What was your first thought when things started to move virtual? They're moving online. Like, everyone's moving stuff that way. Was there a new window for you? What were you thinking when that move first started to really happen?
So there was a new window, and it's still here, and it's a mixed feeling, right? Because you want people to be healthy. You don't want to have, we want to be healthy people. We don't want people to die. We don't want people to be infected by COVID. The market reality is that there's a new window that opened up to virtual production. In fact, we're in the middle of an enterprise process, which we're realizing is taking way too long, but it's okay. Because
they always do.
They always do, because enterprise customers always take longer to make the purchase. But what's cool about it is it's with a really awesome company, and it is a thing that came out of this window. Because production companies need to produce content. Animation is growing at exponential leaps right now because animation can be done remotely. So this is a strange kind of blessing for the company in a way that it opens up a window. It's also just a really sad thing for humanity. So it's that weird mixed feeling.
Yeah, we were just like, all right, let's shut down right away. Like, we shut down about 2 weeks before the province, and we were like, we're a team that can easily adapt to working remotely.
Right, so you shut down a physical location, but you just moved to remote.
Yes.
And we just moved everyone to remote, and we were initially concerned, like, all right, is everything going to dry up? Our contract's going to go away? And we've been really fortunate. We are, still going. The team's actually probably communicating better than ever. And we've been just super fortunate, and we just feel like we're watching a slow train wreck with
everything else and seeing
everything
how it's
going
happening.
on. And
yeah. But for us, it's just like, this is where the world's going. Virtual production is where the world's going. So we've actually aligned ourselves well. It just, COVID accelerated the market adoption.
Which is potentially exciting.
Which is very exciting.
From a business perspective,
from a business perspective,
like, if we're talking about that side
I know,
of it,
it's just, that's the weird, you have to
mixed feeling.
You got to see it for what it is, right?
Yeah. And, during this time, a lot of people are really focusing on mindfulness, and meditation is not a new thing. It's becoming bigger. But during this time, we're really trying to help our teams help each other and ourselves manage the ups and downs. Even having a startup itself has many ups and downs as far as mental health or even physical health is concerned, because you can just work all hours of the day when you're starting your own business. So talk a bit about that. What's that meant for you guys and for your teams?
Well, we are very conscious of the time our team puts into anything. So we actually try to create a very regular environment. We try to give a 9-to-5 job experience. We give people a lot of heads up if there's going to be crunch time. We negotiate that with the employees, very open about it. We don't believe crunch will lead to any sort of successful long-term outcome of a product. And we haven't been seeing any loss in productivity. For myself personally, I have a meditation practice. I also have a weekly growth group that I'm part of, which is a group of 5 or 6 other people. And we kind of talk about how to see life and how to, navigate it. So
And you just formed that group yourself with people that you knew?
No, I actually have a mentor who I've been with for a long time who actually does these kinds of things. And we'll pick a book, we'll explore a philosophy or idea, talk about mind, body, spirit, and then really see how we can make day-to-day changes in our lives in a way that can help create more stability and calmness and reflectiveness and more long-term thinking and that kind of stuff.
Do you have any good tips off the top of your head you can think of?
Yeah, actually, this is something that I do regularly and I've been really focusing on it is, one, start a simple meditation practice, start at 5 minutes and don't worry about if you have a million thoughts in the middle of your meditation, who cares? It doesn't matter. It's just about getting into the fact and realizing you're starting to see what you think. And once you do that, apply that energy into thinking about your negative emotions. So, for example, when you're feeling a piece of tension or something that comes up and you, let's say, let's blame somebody or you're finding there's anger in that, before that happens, there's a series of negative emotions that starts flooding your body very subtly. And the way you start catching those is by learning your awareness through meditation. So start meditation and then start reflecting on negative emotions. I think that's the number one change that I've gone through in the last year, I'd say.
That sounds like a really great tip. John, do you have anything to add for this conversation of mindfulness?
Not mindfulness specifically, but in terms of checking in on team, on well-being and stuff. I think we're in a weird position where we don't have to just do Zoom chats. So we can, a performance review, an employee review the other week turned into just a 2-hour talk about life. And those are important check-ins, but we also test in our software all the time. So we physically feel like we're in the same space. And so you're kind of testing, and I'll use that to check in and just, get into a conversation, and then you're actually kind of feeling like you're having a face-to-face chat, which one of the big missing things in all of this is not seeing people, right? And at least that creates some semblance and some idea that we're as business owners, we're really value driven and we care about our team, and we're we want to make sure they're doing well and their mental health is in a good place and stuff like that. So it's neat that we can actually do sort of almost virtually be there. I mean, we might look like two dinosaurs talking to each other
usually,
but that can actually be disarming too, because when you're not in yourself, you can say things that you might not have been able to say.
That's a really interesting point.
I have to tell a story. So in this process, I just finished teaching a high school class. I was doing every other day in the mornings. I was teaching a high school class in virtual production. It was in grade 9s to 12. And we got them to do a Flipside documentary on COVID, actually. And we got them to all represent themselves in different avatars. One was a piece of bread. One was a big marshmallow man. Another person was this goth character. But when we did the interviews, because they were hidden behind these avatars and these characters, the amount of raw, very personal expression that came out, it was amazing. And that point of disarming yourself by not necessarily being yourself is a really powerful aspect of VR. And we're learning that through our productions, actually. It's a really interesting
and
discovery.
More than just a phone call. There is something to having still a moving face, but that's not necessarily your own.
Not only that, it's also next time you go to a costume store, pick up a mask and just put a mask up in front of you and then talk to your friend. You have safety now behind that mask. So imagine all these kids who are going through some pretty traumatic COVID experiences being able to have safety because they didn't have to express themselves directly, but their message came straight through. But it was one was a slice of bread talking about how children in Yemen were starving.
Wow.
And you're sitting there going, there's something beautifully charming about that. And the fact that we've given these kids the agency to say what they want to say. Like, it's just something related to our product, which I'm really proud of, because I think that's also part of the things that drives us as a company too, you know?
Right. It's like there's so much potential for what you're using. It's just these different applications.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, I know that story made me think of that. And you know how it is, 1, 2, 3.
Perfect. Now, you guys have been a part of a few different accelerators and pitch competitions, and I'm changing the topic here a little bit because you mentioned it earlier and we kind of skipped over it. And so some of these competitions have resulted in great prizes and benefits of mentorship and prize money. How impactful have some of these experiences been on the business or on you?
They have kept us alive when we would be dead. We won $100,000 here in Manitoba in a pitch contest, and we needed that money. We really needed that money.
That was with Innovate Manitoba?
That was with Innovate Manitoba. It was called
Wasn't it
Liftoff.
Yeah,
Liftoff Weekend.
Venture Challenge.
Venture Challenge. I had the worst answer of all time for who our market is.
But you still won.
We still won.
What was that again?
It was people who like Tron.
Oh my God. That was
so very small amount of people that...
Come on. Tron's awesome. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but you have to have people that have all seen it and also
and enjoyed it.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people. There's
of course,
hundreds of thousands
my bad.
of people.
We squeaked in there with that, but it did validate our idea and said, hey, maybe this is the right move to be crazy enough to say, let's turn off all our service stuff and let's focus exclusively on this project.
So that was pretty early.
Very early, yeah. And also one of those things you said earlier about what's innovation, I think we actually won that fundamentally because there was innovation there, because I don't think anyone could have validated the market at that time because the market didn't really exist. We won because they truly saw that we were going in something completely brand new and really radically different. So that would be an example when the market's not there that you can actually, if innovation pays off to get you in the door.
There are some people willing to support that innovation, right? Because there are those big thinkers, those dreamers, those people that know that there was no Google before there was Google. There was no, Netflix before there was Netflix, right? So
that's kind of one of those things. If you're a company, so like we always say that we're a product trying to find a market, because that is the case. We built the product before the market exists. Now the market exists, and now we're like, oh, we got to tweak the product a little bit more to fit the market. That only really works if you're in a really, really new market. Because if you're not in a new market, then you shouldn't be building a product that doesn't have a market. If you were in a completely new market, and this is why it's really unique, because we are giving advice that is probably a little different than somebody who might want to start up like a project management software as a service company. Well, that's a saturated space, and there's lots of rules of how you're going to do that or whatever you're going to do. But if you're going to do something completely innovative that's like there's no market for it, then you have to double down on innovation, because that is the only thing you have, and you have to prove that your ideas are at least aligned with the possibility.
Yeah. I know you guys have also worked with organizations that are local, like Tech West, to go to some big conferences, and New Media Manitoba. Can you talk about some of those experiences?
Well, I'll just ramble through this. Tech West was actually that was one of our really big, first big we got launched on the world stage there, actually. We happened to be one of the few VR companies in Barcelona during Mobile World Conference, and Mark Zuckerberg did a surprise visit that year and introduced the Gear VR to the marketplace, and VR became the only topic people cared about.
From that conference that year.
From that conference, and that year, Tech West had hired a publicity firm, like a PR firm, and they were like, no one wants to hear anything but you guys. And so we got like Ars Technica and CNET, and like all these big publications were writing about us, and we really got our kind of footing in the world stage from Tech West. So that was a big thing for us. And then New Media Manitoba has been such an integral part of being part of our access to markets, helping us understand where our market's growing, us collaborating with them to showing where we're going. And we have had multiple projects with them, from Canada Jobs grants to going to different conferences in the US to GDC, to them even trying new ideas out in the area of real-time animation. So it's been really, like, the Manitoba scene's been super supportive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And I think that so often, people that come on the show have great stories of accessing Manitoba resources and growing here in the prairies. I know you too, you give back to the community here as well. You do some teaching and things like that, like you alluded to. So it's really nice when those stories kind of all come full circle.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have a lot of champions here of Manitoba, and it's something I'm not originally from here. I moved here like 21 years ago. And initially it was the draw of like just an insane music scene. But what keeps me here is like this beyond, running a company, things like that, and having a life, and is just like this community that feels like a big small town and has that like enough people who are just like, we're gonna make this better, even if it's too cold here, and even if it's blah, we're gonna skate, we're gonna do this, we're gonna gonna prove ourselves and gonna like champion other people who are doing so as well. And that's really awesome.
Yeah, that is really awesome. So what's next for Flipside XR and for the two of you?
So we are in the process of essentially finishing our big vision product, not in a polished 100% way, but we will actually get the idea that we were dreaming about in 2016 ready to show people in 2021, and we have some funding for that. So
it's happening.
We're actually building the entire idea out, and we actually are sticking to our guns in it, and it's pretty powerful.
So you're saying in a year we're going to have you back on. It's going to be a whole new conversation.
It's going to be
a much more coherent, but also quite
ginormous idea. Basically, we're just inventing an idea that we believe is going to really change the way people do virtual reality broadcasting, and it's very exciting, and the streaming and all this cool stuff. We also are really starting to see people love our current app in its form, so we're just going to nurture that app. We're going to nurture our relationships, get more customers, grow out the company.
It's kind of, we're hitting a stride right now, I feel like. And that's both like where our roadmap is. I'm chomping at the bit for like the next update and the next one and the next thing we're going to introduce. And it's really aligned with, like last year, we spent a year, we made like 48 episodes. Mostly we didn't. We were like
one of our customers,
back-end support. And a customer of ours made 48 1-hour live streamed episodes that are like, they blew my mind. Every week I'm like,
it's all animated. It's all real time audience
our software, and it was 100% shot in Flipside, and it gave us the opportunity to work with them and to really sort of figure out how to provide more value, how to like take like, oh, this is taking you guys like 2 days out of your week on something. I think we can automate that, and like all these little like value adds. So our product is really aligned with the way people are working and using it. And we're just making that even better, and it's going to be insane. Yeah. It's going to be like a no-brainer app.
Exciting. Now, we love to at the end here have our guests share resources with our listeners. So share with us, what are you reading or streaming right now? And maybe even some of the stuff that you guys are working on, some of these shows that people are streaming. But what are some resources that have guided you into this entrepreneurial path?
Well,
aside from like...
one resource that was helpful was the Y Combinator does a podcast on running a startup, and I went through that process just because.
There's just like very technical, right? It's like step 1, step 2 kind of thing.
Very technical because there is a particular formula to things, and it's really important to know if your cart is before the horse. And a lot of the times you don't know your cart's before the horse. You're working on a problem, and you're like, why is it not working? It's like, oh yeah, we don't have product market fit. So why am I working on a problem that happens after product market fit? Mm-hmm. So a lot of podcasts like that's also I did love what Innovate Manitoba was doing at the time, and I know that some people have picked up on that, but there were some really good boot camp weekends I attended, and then some good advisors that one of our advisors, Alistair, really painted out what a good go-to-market strategy looks like. And when you start seeing some of these things in action, of course, then it's the business model canvas, and then we have a part of all these accelerators. So some of the resources that we find is like the people people are massive resources.
Yeah.
And you can ask questions to people that you can't of a book or a podcast.
Right, to any people. Like, everyone has a different background, right?
Seeking mentors and seeking varied mentors, people with industry experience, like shadow a company for a while that like is in the space you're trying to figure out where you provide value in and confirm your idea with them, things like that.
I talk to other CEOs of other XR companies, and we share kind of our ups and downs. What's really cool about talking to other CEOs is you can kind of get into the kind of like, my mental health is a little bit down right now, and like, what are you doing? And like, there's some of those things you don't want to share with the world. No one wants to share the ugly side of it. Everyone wants to show the perfect polished side. And I'm starting to get like kind of fed up with that image of what it is to be a CEO. And it's like, it's actually a lot of hard work.
Yeah, and I appreciate the stories you guys told us today, like in that realm, right? Because we do try and bring that up on the show and make sure people understand, like, starting a startup can be super exciting, but it's also really tough. It's not just the like working from the Bahamas type of view that people think it is, you know?
It's like self-judgment. It's like depression. It can be all kinds of like really like negative. It can be really isolating as well if you're not like in a startup community. And you don't have those other people to go like, I'm going crazy. And even like us, we're lucky. We have like, you said the tripod, like we have the three of us as founders and we can talk.
We call ourselves a tripod because we only have three founders that are all doing work, which is also rare, by the way, to find three co-founders that are all
in the business, not just out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what's happened is that always two of us are supporting the third if there's anyone on a weakness side. So that has been a super powerful resource as well. So finding good co-founders is a resource.
And like doing it alone, I ran my first business for 10 years alone, and I brought people in for things, but I was the owner. The buck stops here. When things are bad, you could talk to other people, but if they're not also business owners, they just kind of like approach it with a different sort of, there's just a different lens they see it, and they try to give you like placating advice and things, and it just feels like it makes you feel more alone than had you just not talked to them at all. So finding those like relationships, you can be really honest. And
one more resource too, and I know people want to go like, what blogs and things? Like, I read those things and sometimes I just like, it's great. But I find, for example, we're having a challenge in trying to like really build a nice, robust software as a service sales process. It's a very challenging thing to create the right ways of doing this all, right? And so we just connected with a mentor, a sales mentor, and it's just finding the mentors that can come in there who have been in the shoes you're in now, who can tell you how they got out of these shoes into where they are now.
And the blue suedes.
Exactly. Make them look nice and cool now. But, and then we got this really awesome thing, the sales sprint document that he'd been working on for 3 years. And now that's becoming at the center of our strategy for how we're going to approach this. And like, things like that. People. That's what I'd say.
Yeah. That's a really great tip. And, I've had friends start tech businesses that have failed, and it's on a lot of the things you guys talked about today. And often it is that holding that idea too close to your chest, not sharing it, not asking for support from the people around you. So that's a really great tip to leave on here. And guys, last question. What is the best way to learn more about Flipside XR and get in contact with you?
FlipsideXR.com. Really?
And on Twitter, we're Flipside XR. On Facebook, we're Flipside XR. LinkedIn, we're Flipside XR.
Instagram, I believe we're Flipside XR.
Okay, that was super complicated, all those different names you gave us, but we'll try and keep it straight. Okay, thanks, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a comment below. Also, find us at startpodcast.ca for full show notes and to really get to know all of our guests, and join our email list so you never miss an episode. You can also chat with us on social media at Start Podcast, or find me at Margaux Miller. For now, thanks for watching.